The St. Patrick's Day Foundation is an organisation that I founded in 2012 when I realised after our 250th celebration having revenues of 1.2 million, we were only 20,000 to the positive. We were going bankrupt eventually. Okay. So this group of people met them at a University College Galway dinner in New York, and there were lawyers and bankers, and they says, well, what can we do? So it took me about 6 months to realise we needed to found a foundation, and since then we've raised I don't know how many million to keep the parade funded, because we don't get funding from Ireland. They come out to use us and as a platform, but we don't get funding. We have to raise the money ourselves. Okay. And thank God, the current parade chairman of the board, thank God he came in at that time, and him and I sat, and I said, let's form a foundation, because we had to engage Wall Street people, and he had access to the Wall Street.
Excellent. So I mean, I'll tell you a story, Hilary. My father and my daughter, my brother and my sister all went out to the New York parade on St. Patrick's Day, probably about 10 years ago. And my father was hilarious. So he was in his 70s at the time, and he used to wear a fedora. And everyone used to come up to him, all the young girls and lads would come up saying that they wanted a photo with this guy with the fedora. And he was like, there's no old people in New York. And then he was like, there's not a blade of grass. And I said, the Central Park's in New York. Did you not go there? And he was quite funny about it. But he was delighted to go to New York.
Yeah, put it this way, a lot of people are surprised at how friendly people are in New York when they get there, from the people from Ireland, that is. And New Yorkers are friendly.
But I think also that everyone loves the Irish accent.
Yes, they do, yeah. And here in Ireland, if a young lad comes to Ireland, the girls love the American accent.
That's true. So Hilary, what's your mission here in Ireland at this time?
At this point in time, I have the Irish abroad, which is about 1 million Irish-born nationals like myself, born and raised in this country. We have nobody to represent our interests in our homeland. And we have an interest in our homeland. Why? Because our families live here, our relatives live here, and somebody should be able to be present in Dublin to represent our interests. We have a lot to offer. All you have to do is look at the GAA across the world. Larry McCarthy from Cork here is a classic example of the Irish abroad giving back to Ireland. And without that engagement, Ireland is not engaging 20% of its population with some type of representation, but also Ireland is not engaging what in essence could be an economic force that could be bought to help the Irish nation here in Ireland. And also when it comes to politics, the Irish people are in politics all over the world. Ireland wouldn't have the Good Friday Agreement without the Irish in the United States. There is somewhere in the region of 900 corporations here in Ireland, because Ireland is the gateway to the European Union market, and they're from the United States. And how did that happen? It would have been the Irish in the United States that would have helped that. And what I'm saying is the mission is to get Ireland to engage, in particular, it's Irish-born nationals abroad, and not just in the United States, but in Australia, in Canada, in Malaysia, and in conversations with people literally all over the world. They want engagement at home.
My daughter's in the UK and she'd also want engagement.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Like there's Donald Crotty in Malaysia. He heads up the Irish Chamber of Commerce. He's crying out for engagement. There's Raymond Sexton, as you know, in Australia, again crying out for engagement. There's Jackie Gilna in Ottawa, in Canada, again crying out for engagement. She heads up We Are Global Irish. There's so many of us that literally are crying out for engagement, and there's so much that we can give back in return. But Ireland has not engaged us, despite the Manning report of 2013, which recommended some type of voting rights for the Irish abroad. It still isn't there, and we have been informed that it won't be there until maybe the year 2030. In other words, we feel that it will never be there.
Okay. My cousin Caroline Gallagher lives in Chicago. And she was born in Glasgow, but she was raised in Donegal on the island along with myself. And she went to the secondary school that was built there. And she won an award, the Tip O'Neill Diaspora Award,
Yes.
in September. And there was a big contingent of Boston politicians in the room, you know, like engaging. The two other male recipients were from Boston. She was the only native Irish person to win the award. And I just thought it quite interesting, the whole dynamics, and that Donegal in particular seemed to quite marry that whole diaspora and the Tip O'Neill. Tip's son, I think it was Joe, the name will come to me. Anyway, his son was there as well, and it was that whole, I just found it quite a lovely night that to celebrate the diaspora and the coming together and the potential alignment.
Well, I'm part. When you mentioned Tip O'Neill, I was invited to join the Irish Ad Hoc Committee to protect the Good Friday Agreement in 2021, and it took me 1 minute to decide what I was going to do. Why? Because when I was a kid watching RTE, there was Tip O'Neill with the ad hoc committee, the Irish Ad Hoc Committee in Washington, and I knew I was joining that group, and it was such an honour for me to join it. Why? I was the only Irish-born national in that group at a time when the United States was formulating US foreign policy when it came to Brexit, and we had input into US foreign policy in relation to the hard border negotiations that went on. And when you mentioned Tip O'Neill, it was like such an honour for me and still is, to be a part of that group. And last year, the Golden Bridges Award, it's done by Donegal County Council and Strabane, and I was one of the recipients of that in Boston last year. So again, like a lot of connections, a lot of things.
Yeah, because we heard the story of how the Ireland Funds was created, because Tip O'Neill came and he saw that there was lots of people unemployed in Derry. You know, there was 18% or something like that in Derry at one point, and you know, mainly men. And the Ireland Funds were there to support, you know, industry, you know, particularly in Ulster. So Fruit of the Loom, the guy who set up Fruit of the Loom in Derry and Donegal, he gave a great story, you know, on that whole thing. Is there anything you want, if people want to reach out to you?
Well, we have a website, it's hilarybeirne.ie, and we're looking for people to vote in the next Shannon elections in the National University of Ireland constituency, which I'm eligible to run. And to basically, the idea is, why am I running in that constituency? More than half the graduates of the National University of Ireland actually live abroad, just like I do. And the current sitting senators don't represent us. They represent the people here, but not those of us who live abroad. And also I want to represent the broader Irish community in the Shannon, so that we can, in essence, start a political movement and political sport to include the Irish abroad. And when I ask in a room full of people, how many of you lived abroad here in Ireland? 75% of the room put their hands up. And then when I ask how many of you have relatives live abroad, more put their hands up. There's not one single family in Ireland, I would imagine, that has not been touched by immigration in some form or shape. And yet after 300 years of immigration, 100 years of the state, the Irish abroad are not included. We're excluded. And I think that needs to change. And like I said, there's so much we can do. And you look down through history, the Irish who lived abroad, that came back and had tremendous impact on Ireland. Like Michael Collins lived in London, worked in the post office. Tomas MacDonald worked in New York. Jim Larkin went all over the United States before founding the trade union movement. So and the Irish today are just like them. We have an interest. It's our homeland. Our families live here. And in theory, we should be included, like all other European nations include their citizens abroad, and 2/3 of the nation of the world. The Brazilians voted in Croke Park. The Poles voted in Dublin. Somebody was telling me this evening there was another nationality that was voting here. We should have that ability. We are part of the Irish nation. We just happen to live abroad.
And there's always the potential that you could return.
Yes. And no Irish person leaves Ireland without that in the back of the mind, that they want to come home. And that's the key. My wife said to me, but you've lived in New York longer than Ireland. Why do you still call it home? I says, Ireland's my home. Why? Because I grew up there. It's the land of my birth. And even on people's deathbeds, they talk about home. Ireland is, if you were born and raised in this country, Ireland is always your home. Even on people's deathbeds, they talk about it. And that's just still amazing. I
think it's because we've got such a close connection with the land. Because I'm from Donegal, and occasionally it chokes me to say, but I live in Cork, and I'm really happy in Cork, and I'm 25 years in Cork. Yeah. I may never leave Cork, but I'm not from here.
Yeah. And it's funny you say it. Like like when people introduce me, oh, this is Hilary Beirne from New York. The first thing I do is I correct them and say, no, I'm from Roscommon. I've lived in New York, but I'm from Boyle, County Roscommon, because I think that's so important.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hilary, a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Take care.